is building a Bitcoin mining business. Rob Tishner, who traveled up from Champaign today, and occasionally comes up from Champaign. You graduated from DePauw in 2000. DePauw. I said DePauw, right? I didn't say DePauw. And you were a purchasing chain manager for
Supply chain. I still
supply chain manager.
Yeah.
Okay, so you still have a day job for 14 years, but the Bitcoin bug bit you hard in 2014,
Yeah.
and you saw the light.
Yep. I saw Andreas for like hours on end until my daughter was ready to kill me.
And he started up Bitcoin mining. He's going to tell us all about it. And you started at a great time, 2014, and especially an interesting time now with the happening just behind us by 2 months. So I'd like to give a warm welcome to Rob Tishner.
Yeah, thanks. I really appreciate Broken Mark having me out. I'd like to focus kind of on a higher level on mining, some technical aspects of mining, but focus on some of the things you see in the press about mining that I believe are not necessarily the case because I do it. So there's some things out there I try to clear up and try to give you an understanding of how the business works, how we did it, if you can do it, that sort of thing. Is it profitable? Is it not? I'm sure you see a lot of things about that in the press, and so we'll discuss some of that. At Rob Tishner is my Twitter handle, so follow me, hit me up. If you guys have questions at any time, let me know. Rob at TishnerCrypto.com, shoot me an email. Miners in general, I've found across the country are very willing to help you get into the business. You might think that's kind of weird, you bring competitors in, but we're very willing to help you and help you get set up. We already went through this. I'm from Champaign, went to DePauw University. I studied economics, so that aspect of Bitcoin is very interesting to me. I've been a supply chain manager for about 14 years, so I source machines and things and do contracts and work with suppliers, which was kind of helped me in this endeavor. Kind of an entrepreneur background. I mean, I've tried several different things. Some multi-level marketing companies I tried way back didn't work. But I've looked at different opportunities. Bitcoin came up, and I was like, oh yeah, this is it. I'm going to do this. I put 2011 on there. 2014 is correct because I kind of came back to it. The first time, a lot of people tell you like that. You got in 2011, you looked at it, you're like, this isn't going to work. It was kind of that reaction. I like playing around with RPod, like Raspberry Pis. Does anybody have one of those? Okay. So I think I was on a chat room or something on an RPi. Somebody built a miner with that, with the RPi, which you can't do now for Bitcoin. And I started learning about it. I didn't do anything with it. I came back in 14. I read the paper, and then I started watching Andreas. And he talks about going into a fugue state, and that was me. And you can ask my dad. You get up, you think about it, you get on the internet, you read about anything you can read. Before you go to bed, you just get into it and try to figure it out. So I was trying to think, okay, I'm not a coder. What am I going to do with this? So the things that I would like to focus on are some of the myths that I think that are out there, especially in the Bitcoin media and the mainstream media. Starting small. I mean, I started with one miner, and built it up over time. My dad, Bob, in the back, and I built this business up. Our miner fleet, some interesting statistics about like how many we have, how much power we use, things like that might kind of put some. I know people talk about electricity costs and things like how does it work. So I'm going to put some numbers on that so you can see what do I do on a day-to-day basis. Like how do I manage the business? Centralization that comes up. Has anybody heard about mining centralization? Yeah. So I wanted to give you some talk a little bit about that. The have and debrief. Like what happened? Because everybody's like, oh my God, the hash rate is going to crash. It's all over. Didn't happen. It didn't happen. So I'm going to talk about that and a little bit of Q&A. So feel free to chime in, ask me questions. Mining this. Mining isn't profitable anymore. How many of you have heard that? Okay. Well, obviously it is, because I'm standing up here. So that's one thing. I'll just do this real quick. All major miners are in China. How many of you guys believe that? Okay. China will take over all mining. These are just things that you see. You can't mine at home. How many of you guys have heard that? There's no ROI on the machines. Like you just mine and mine and mine, you never get your money back. Electricity is the only cost factor. So if I can only get 9 cents kilowatt hour per kilowatt hour, I'm done. Can't do it. Miners are money hungry jerks. Anybody heard that? I don't consider myself a money hungry jerk, and the people that the people that I know that mine seem like pretty good people. I think they're entrepreneurs just like anybody else. Some people sell hot dogs, some people sell digital goods, some people sell books, some people do whatever. It's just something that you're producing at a profit.
Right. Just make a comment. During the halving 2 months ago, the miners, in 1 millisecond, went to losing half of their income, and they were having parties about it.
I shed a
So
tear.
I don't know if that implies money hungry jerk.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead, thanks. Go ahead. So starting off, like how did I get started? Okay, so my first miner was a big crane miner. This machine it did 1 terahash. Okay, 1 terahash is a measure of the speed, and it took 1,000 watts to do 1 terahash. Okay, so that I started with that like literally in my house. So I started mining from Newegg. I didn't have enough power in my house because these things take 1,000 watts per unit. So on a typical standard household circuit, you can only put one of these on there. My dad had a 230 volt circuit that he wasn't using, so I said, great, I can go over to his house and plug in and I can get like 4 or 5 more. Have you guys heard of the Bitmain S4? Maybe you've seen that machine. So I had 4 of those plugged it in at my dad's house and got going. So I went to my dad and said, look at this, you gotta look at this. I mean, everybody I talked to, you're not gonna make any money. This is stupid, why are you doing this? I went to my dad and said, Dad, you gotta look at the numbers. I mean, it works. So he's like, okay, all right, we'll give it a try. So we placed an order with Spondoolies. Have you guys heard of Spondoolies? Yeah. They're now defunct. I still own some of their machines. They're tanks, they're great machines. Unfortunately, they went out of business, but, and we ordered 20 machines from Israel. And so I went to my dad and I said, I want to Bitcoin mine. I need to order 20 machines from Israel. Can you wire some money over there? And he looked at me like I was nuts, but I was like, this is going to work. I mean, we just got to do it. So we did it. Unbelievable. Wired money. The machines came in. So that's kind of like where I started getting to a kind of an industrial type level. So we had 20 machines, and I started moving out into co-located hosting facilities. So you can't, when you get to this level, you can't do it in your house. You've got to partner up with somebody that's got space. That initial picture you saw was one of our hosts. So, hosting nightmare. So if you're thinking about mining, listen well, because we had some issues that you can avoid. Right? So one of the mines, or one of the co-location spaces that we went to, we sent the machines out there. They weren't taking care of them. They were running too hot. They were turning off all the time. Things were not going to work. So I had to basically hire somebody to go steal my own equipment. And that didn't know if we were going to make it through that one. We did. And it turned out for the better. But you really got to research what you're doing, who you're working with in this industry. Because there's a lot of people out there that will tell you one thing and do the other. And it's not good for that. So. eBay empty boxes debacle. Have you ever ordered something from eBay and got an empty box? We did. Be careful if you order miners from eBay. Used miners. We went through that. ordered some miners. Typically when you start off, if you're buying used, then obviously it costs less money, less upfront capital. And we ordered 4 or 5 miners, I don't remember what it was. Showed up in a box, nothing in the box. So, moral of the story, do your research. If you're interested in mining, find a miner that's done it and kind of been through this pain. Save yourself, you know, some of those issues that you run into out there.
Did you win the eBay case?
Yeah, we actually did. It took a long time, but we got it back.
Define long time, months.
It's a couple months.
So, probably 3 months later.
3 months. I can hit double that.
Okay, so like I mentioned, we started off with one. It was November of 14, I think. Then we grew to 20. Then we started bringing in investors into our company, and we grew it significantly. Currently, we have 1,100 miners. This miner right here is a Bitmain S7. Feel free to check this guy out. You guys have probably heard of the S9, which is the same footprint. There's a lot of people still running this machine right here. It is a workhorse. It's a 28 nanometer chip, and I won't get into all of that stuff, but essentially the S9 is a 16 nanometer chip. This is a 28. This machine is very stable, so there's a lot of big miners still running this machine. Okay, so we went from one machine that was 1,000 watts, I could run it on one circuit in a house, to 1.32 megawatts, which is enough to run 50 homes currently. So the power consumption, you know, obviously our biggest cost is our electricity, but just kind of it's a lot of power. I mean, it's a lot of power. I mean, our plants that I buy for in my real job use that kind of power, you know, it's big power. These machines, now this is an interesting thing about Bitcoin miners, they put out a ton of heat. Okay, I mean, I'm talking serious heat. So like 4 of these machines, if you ran 4 of these machines in this space, within an hour, it would be 90 degrees in here. So they put out, I did some calculations, and our miners combined put out 4.5 million BTU of heat. So that's like 50 furnaces, 50 home furnaces, the output. So one of the challenges that you have is, it's not only the upfront cost, and you know, the day-to-day, it's getting rid of the heat. So S9s are great. You can run an S9 right now at your house and you'll make money. The problem is, if you add to that, where's it gonna go? Where's the heat gonna go? So I think it's great that mining can move back into the home, but there's some challenges with that, with heat and just the amount of electricity that you have to use. Our total hash rate at this point, it's over 4 petahash. I think it's like 4.2 petahash. Go ahead. Which is 4 quadrillion hashes per second. I mean, it's just mind-boggling. I think every second, our machines are trying to solve that number 4 quadrillion times. I mean,
And how much of the total Bitcoin computation network is for?
less than 1%.
Less than 1%.
Less than 1%.
Right.
Yeah. We're on the Cano mining pool. We're probably 6 to 7% of that pool. And it's 40, I think the last time I checked it was like 48 petahash.
What's the name of that pool?
Cano that is. Yeah, there's lots of them out there. What do we mine? So with this hash power, I've added in we do mine Ethereum and Ethereum Classic as well, and some other GPU coins. But Bitcoin and altcoins. I mean, we look at you know, obviously the profitability. We have to be profitable as one aspect. We also look at, you know, just what does the coin do? If one coin has certain aspects that we like, I mean, from a what they do perspective, we may mine that versus the other one. So that's kind of you know, how we look at things in terms of coins we mine. Okay, so I brought this miner. It's kind of hard to see here, but this is an Ethereum miner. You guys have heard about Ethereum. So we actually just started a project recently where we're going to mine GPU coins, like I already mentioned. Specifically, we're mining Ethereum Classic right now on these machines. We've got a space where we're going to run about 50 of these. I just wanted to show kind of the progression here of chip technology. We have a bunch of these Avalon 6s. They're 0.3 watts per gigahash. Okay, and that's kind of a measure of the efficiency, how much power do you put in, how much hash rate do you get out. Just for your kind of a comparison, the S9 is 0.1 watt per gigahash. So it's a huge improvement. If you think about like this, it's kind of crazy to think about. I think the Ethereum mine or hash power right now, the total network is like 4 terahash, I think. Is that right? This machine is 4.7 terahash. See, it's just mind-boggling the improvements in technology and how fast it can change. And here's just some information. So each one of these miners is 4.86 terahash a second at 1200 watts, which is 0.25. So you can see the miners that had S9s previous to the halving were okay. I mean, right? Because their efficiency is more than 50% better than the other miners' equipment. So they can basically it's a wash, right? I mean, they're mining double equipment, same power. So. I just put this up here to kind of show like where we've come in terms of financial performance and what you can do. It's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of trying to educate people first about Bitcoin and how mining works and that sort of thing. But we started zero here. You can see this, I don't know if you guys can see that, but right about here we peaked out in terms of mined Bitcoin at over 200 a month. And then having it. So you can see that drop off there. So the nice thing is our profitability has remained pretty strong through the halving because we've increased our hash power. And so we would like to see Bitcoin around 700, 750, around that level, and we'll be exactly where we were pre-halving. So in terms of revenue, right? Every block that's solved, we're getting half that Bitcoin, but the price has adjusted accordingly. And if you look at the, I think I talked to Rick about this. If you look at if you map out or graph out the mining difficulty versus price, you see a very positive correlation. I haven't had to run the numbers, but I'm guessing that our squared is probably, or like statistics people, is probably above 0.8, right? So it's very positive correlation. So what does that mean? That means if lots of people are entering the market and the hash rate is going very high, and it's getting harder and harder and harder to mine, basically what we've seen is that we stay at about the same profitability because the price goes up, right? Which makes sense. I mean, if more people are entering the market, why are they entering the market? Because they're after something that's valuable, right? And it's getting more valuable. So they come in, but your profitability is staying pretty constant because at the same time the price is going up. Does that make sense? And that's what we've seen. Like we've been doing this for 2 years. We've been through the ups, the downs, we've been through the halving, we've been through all that stuff, and our profitability has remained fairly steady. It's not always steady. Things happen, you have bad months, whatever. I mean, you don't have, maybe your pool isn't as lucky, you know, things like that, because there's luck. So there's, basically, it's luck, right? I mean, finding a block is luck. It's like flipping a coin 4 quadrillion times a second, right? Until you hit it. So sometimes, on an average, you're going to be about the same, but you have a bad month. And we can't control that, but it's just part of the business. So that's kind of how our, I'm a metrics-oriented person, so I love Bitcoin because there's so much data. Like you can grab the data, analyze it, see what's going, whatever. So you would look at this. This is the blocks that we hit on a daily basis, right? Or our pool hits, I'm sorry. So every time you see one of these data points, and this was back in May, June, July, so I guess right about here was the halving. You can see that every time this hits, the pool got 20 back here, the pool got 25 Bitcoin, and then we get the percentage that we're providing to the pool. So you can see from a trend perspective, it looks pretty ugly, right? But it makes sense because at this point right here, the pool's only getting 12 and a half, and we're only getting a percentage of that 12 and a half. So whatever it is, 6 or 7%. So that's, the good thing is we're still in business, right? I mean, we made it through it fine. We're not making as much money, but things are going to equal out. I'm positive that there's so much value in Bitcoin that it's going to go up. And if it doesn't, I'll just run and hide. Okay. So, operations, real quick. You can go ahead and just put them up. Okay, so how do we? One extra, sorry. How do we? What do I do on daily basis? You guys wonder about do miners have to be watching this all the time? There's a lot of automation involved with this technology. So, I have 1,000 miners out there. I mean, one might go offline. I mean, how am I going to know? There are ways that remote monitoring can work so that if that machine goes offline, I get an email or a text message that says, hey, machine number whatever on this shelf is down. You need to restart it or whatever. Then I'll Skype the guy that's on the floor at our mine out west, and they'll restart the machine for us. So I spend a lot of my time monitoring machines. Just real quick. This is a live machine. It's currently mining Ethereum Classic. It's just a small PC that I set up that does a lot of our, basically runs our small mine in Illinois. And so it's mining it currently at 62 megahash a second. So Ethereum is measured in megahash per second versus petahashes and Bitcoin as far as what we're doing. The interesting thing about this, and I was talking to some of your guys, Ethereum is very profitable to mine right now. And if you look at the cost to mine Ethereum in terms of Bitcoin, so if you mine Ethereum or Ethereum Classic, the profitability is very close. And convert it to Bitcoin, the cost to mine one Bitcoin is like 40% less. So this is one way that we are looking at trying to diversify because we want to get more coins, but also to help our profitability through this kind of trough, the downturn. So it's real exciting. It just does this 24/7, right? One other aspect that I mentioned this earlier, but it's not just monitoring your power, monitoring your machines. You have to have an environment where these things can run with dry air. It has to be dry air. You got to have a lot of movement of air. So you either have to air condition, which is extremely expensive, or you just get lots of volume of air. Out west, it's easier because the air out there out west is dry. So you don't have to dehumidify the air. You just bring it in, tons of CFM, and blow it out. So it goes in this end. This thing sounds like a jet engine when it turns on.
CFM?
Yeah, huge CFM.
What is CFM?
Huh?
What is CFM?
Well, how much CFM?
No, what is CFM?
Oh, cubic feet.
Per minute.
Yeah, cubic feet per minute. Volume of air.
Gotcha.
So for example, the mine, we're in a 10 megawatt mine out west. They're moving millions of CFM through there, and it's just in and out. It would be like very expensive to try to air condition that. So it's just air movement, which is. I also monitor our humidity in our mine and obviously our temperature. These things can run pretty hot. So 90 degrees in there, it's not a problem. But I just wanted to show you guys that, you know, this sort of thing is important to mining, not just, you know, the other aspects. Okay. Other things that I work on as part of running the business are supplier partnerships. So finding people that you can trust to get machines, to host your machines, to work on your machines. You know, these types of things that you have to line this stuff up and know that you can trust them to take care of your equipment. This is a huge investment. I mean, you're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. So you have to know that the people that are watching your stuff are taking care of it. And you know, I kind of went through that we fell down a couple times getting there, but now we're with people that we trust to handle our equipment. So that's a really important aspect of this. If you get into it bigger, you need to make sure that you're working with people that are reputable, and they might not necessarily be like out there in the media or, you know, have websites and things like that. Some of the people that do this big time don't want to be out in the media, right? So it's kind of like a thing where you meet them at trade shows, you meet them kind of in the Bitcoin space, but they're not going to be advertising where they have a 10 megawatt mine. But they do good work, so it's kind of like one of those deals where you just got to find out the people. Accounting, I do a lot of that. I have to work with our shareholders. New locations, we're looking at growing. I mentioned Ethereum and that sort of thing. Constantly learning. I mean, you guys know, I mean, I love Bitcoin because every day there's something new. Every day there's a new deal, there's somebody's coming out with a new product. I mean, there's a new software, there's new, I don't know. I mean, you just get on blockchain.info and you're just like, whoa. I mean, it's just constantly, you're inundated with new things and it's exciting. And I enjoy that because we're on the bottom of it and we're providing all this horsepower to make all this stuff work. And so I really enjoy that. Profitability. This is, a lot of people have questions about this. Is it profitable? Yes, it is. It is profitable. The problem with Bitcoin mining is, and in a lot of businesses, you have controllable costs, right? There's things that you can control, whether you negotiate things, a lot of it, I would say, you know, 70% of what I do is controllable in my real job. And this, I mean, you can't control the price. I mean, it could go down 50% tomorrow. You can't do anything about it. So I think what you have to do is, number one, you really have to believe in Bitcoin. Because it's like you're putting a lot of money at stake. You have to believe in the technology. When people come to us and we talk to them about potentially investing money in our business, we're kind of in a situation where I want to know that you believe in this. Like, I love to have your money, we want to grow, but I want you to believe in what Bitcoin is, not just because we're going to send you a Bitcoin every month, right? So, you know, that's one of the hard things.
Could you state for the record whether you are Chinese?
I'm sorry?
Could you state for the record whether you are Chinese?
Probably a small percentage at some point. Good. Mining difficulty. So does anybody understand that or know about mining difficulty? Okay. So basically it is, you know, what it says. I mean, as more people enter and provide hashing power to the network, it gets much more difficult to mine. If you look at the difficulty graph over the last few years, it's like straight up. But we reached the peak around 14 or 15, somewhere around there, where ASIC technology got about as good as it was going to get without a huge capital inflow and people building new chips and all that thing. It's expensive. So we've kind of hit that peak, and now we're in a time where I think it's leveled off. You're not going to see a lot of new miners coming out. Not in 3 months, 2 years, 4 years, that type of thing. So you've got time to recoup your investment. And that's the key. I mean, you want to get your money back. then you want a long period of time where you're running on the house's money. So, uptime, huge. Huge, huge, huge. Goes back to where you have your equipment. Like I said before, we were out west, we were in a mine, started out great. Then a couple weeks into it, I logged on, nothing. Not one of them was up. I'm still paying the hosting fee, right? It's not based on like your actual usage. It's a monthly cost based on your equipment. So if you got, maybe it might be $70 a kilowatt, and then that's backed into whatever equipment you're running. And so you get your machine's kind of running. So it's critical that your machines are running 24/7. And so that's why these tools that we have to manage the business are real important. Hosting electrical costs, I've kind of talked about that. Out of the box efficiency. So this, like I mentioned before, this miner, 0.25 watts per gigahash. I can tell you right now, this machine does not do 0.25 watts per gigahash. It doesn't do that. It's more like 0.28, 0.3, which is a big deal when you're talking hundreds of thousands. I mean, it's a big deal. So, another aspect of mining that's important is optimization after the purchase. So firmware optimization, working with people that know how to underclock this machine so that we can use less power. So for example, we could underclock this a machine. This one's not underclockable, but say like a Spondoolies, you could lower your power consumption by 50%, but only have a 17 or 18% reduction in your hash rate. So when we were getting close to the mine, if you had a big power or a price decrease and your margins were really thin, you could underclock your machines and increase your profitability. So that type of optimization is pretty important. And that's after the purchase, not out of the box. Yeah, I mentioned that. Connection stability, so internet connection. The big facilities we're in have dual fiber connections. They have massive airflow. It's like, you think big, huge data center, Google type situation. Those are the type of facilities that we're in. They don't look like a Google facility. They're just gigantic spaces with racks and racks and racks. But essentially what it's doing is the same. In fact, one of the ones that we're not in currently, but out west was right down the street from a Google facility. So. Weather's a big deal. If it's humid, your machines might say, well, it's too hot, and they'll start running real slow. So again, your efficiency drops. You're still paying that money out regardless. It's a fixed cost, right? You're paying that money out monthly. So if it's hot and there's not efficient cooling, or maybe it's just hot and you can't do anything about it, your miners might decide, well, we're too hot. We're gonna slow down so that we don't hurt the internals of the machine, because a lot of those have that capability. Again, it's an uncontrollable. You can't do anything about it, but it happens and it affects your profitability. This is really hard to see. I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about centralization and what do you guys think about centralization when you think about mining? China.
Yeah.
What else?
Iceland.
Anything else? So, have you guys seen this graph before?
Yeah.
This is off of blockchain info. This half of the graph is China. All of it. And even some of this. So you look at that and you're like, wow, they could take over the network, right? I think Andreas does a good job explaining why that's pretty much impossible, but it is concerning that you have all these Chinese pools on this side. And then can't see it. We're somewhere in here. Or actually, no. I don't know where it's at. Can't see it, but we're in one of these areas right here. I kind of like being in the mid tier, so I'm not in a huge pool. I'm in kind of a smaller pool, so we we don't find as many blocks as the big pool, but on average, you're gonna get the same amount of money. Does that make sense? So, what is this? My point about this is that, okay, Ampool has 15.9% of the market, hash power. Do all the people on Ampool that point their machines to Ampool, are they all in China? No, they're not. I know that because I mine on Ampool, and I know a lot of people that mine on Ampool. So, the interesting thing is, physically the server, or the main server, might be in China, but you may have hundreds of thousands of miners that are in the US mining on Ampool, or on BTCC, or on F2 Pool. Or they may be in South America, or they may be in Russia, or Europe. So, it's hard for me to you know, first of all, we don't have the data. Okay, we don't know. We know that they have 15.9%. We don't know inside of that 15.9% how many IPs are coming from the US. We don't know. The only way we get it if they would tell you, they're never going to tell you. But what I can say is, I am very confident that in this half of this pie, there is a large percentage coming outside of China. And if any of these miners that are in this half say, I don't like what BTCC is doing. You know, they want SegWit. I don't want SegWit. Or, you know, whatever the proposal is, if you don't like it, then guess what? You log on, boom, change it to a different pool, like that. So I think centralization, there's more to it. There's more to centralization than where these people are geographically. Like tons of miners in Iceland. I don't know where they mine, but I mean, they could be over here, who knows? But don't take it at the, you know, the headline drive-by media value that all the mining is in China. Physically, there's a lot of machines in China because power is cheap or free. It's free in some instances.
It's subsidized, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that makes sense. There's a lot of miners there. But my point is that this number doesn't tell you the whole story. And just think about that when you read about these things. They're looking at these numbers and they're saying, oh yeah, it's over. What if China does this? Or, okay, well, there's a large percent. If they acted in a way that was counter to what those miners think, they'll just move like that. That's their vote, right? That's how we vote. We want SegWit, we want these different proposals, we put our hash power to that pool. So there's just more to the story. Okay, well, the future, slower ASIC development. I already mentioned that. We made a greater than 50% jump in the power efficiency from this miner to the S9. So I think ASICs will get better, but they're not going to get better every 3 months or every 6 months. So I think my personal opinion is this machine, the 28 nanometer workhorse that's been so reliable, is going to be reliable for a long period of time. I don't know what it will be, but I think it's going to be viable for a long time, you know, into the future. The S9, you know, obviously it's profitable. People are, but there's no free lunch, right? You have great power efficiency, but you have massive amounts of heat you have to deal with. So you have an extremely dense, we call these the blades, these mining boards are extremely dense with chips. So there's no free lunch, right? It's great. It can get 0.1 per G is what we call it, 0.1 per gigahash. How do you deal with the heat? So, you know, I guess my point is that it's great, there's improvements, but there's another side of this that you have to deal with other things outside of that. One other thing about China that I'll tell you, I mentioned that cooling is extremely important, cooling or air volume. Well, in China they use evaporative cooling. You guys know what that is? Basically, in climates where it's dry, you can use very low cost, they used to call them swamp coolers. So they basically run air through a condenser. It's not a condenser, but basically, when you get in front of a cool mist fan, that cooling effect is what they use. Does anybody see an issue with that? In electronics.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So if you get somebody on the phone that says, "Hey, I got a great deal for you. I got a container of S9s that've been in my mine in China for 2 years. You want them?" Don't do it. Because they use evaporative cooling. There's probably there's condensation. That's another reason. Great, you have cheap power. You have to cool these things. And you have to do it efficiently at low cost. So that current answer is we're going to evaporate cool. So that's kind of an equalizing force, right? You have cheap power. Well, in America, we have good resources for cooling. We have relatively cheap power if you go to the right places. We have a robust internet system, right? In China, they don't. In a lot of cases, they have issues with latency. Pinging the machines back and forth and getting the packets to where they need to go can be an issue. So I think in the end, again, the story, there's much more to the story. It's going to get, it's just not as simple as you read about. Focus on equipment, I mentioned that. Cooling and ventilation. Next gen, ASUS technology, I would say probably 2 years before you see any improvement. There are people that have had 16 nanometer chips for a long time. They weren't any better. They actually use more power or were less efficient than the 28 nanometer chips. I can't think of the name of the company that had one. They went bust recently.
KC Minor?
Yeah, right. Yeah. So they had a chip for a long time, but it just didn't pan out. These things are they're very expensive to produce, and relative to like the cell phone market, they're producing, millions and millions and millions of chips. I mean, this is a relatively small industry. So your cost to produce a chip is, you have a lot of tooling costs, right? Millions of dollars has to go into the development. And the problem with that chip that small is the yield is not very good. So for this market, and the yield that you get on that chip, for the people that are making the chip, it may not make sense until the market's much bigger. So, and that raises the cost of mining machines, reduces your ROI and all that stuff. GPU mining and diversification. Just like anything investing that you do in the stock market, whatever, you want to be diversified. So that we see that. I mean, obviously we believe in Bitcoin first and foremost, but we also believe in all the blockchain technologies, and we'll support those with our hash value. I always think there'll be a GPU market, because I think as altcoins come out, and you see new altcoins, you guys get on Polynex. Yeah, I mean, every day there's a new one that pops up. I saw 2 or 3 yesterday. I was like, what is this? And some people at Stanford are doing something with using blockchain technology for medical purpose. I didn't really understand it, but it's just really cool. I mean, they can use our processing power to do those types of, they can do the work they need to do by leveraging this open network. I mean, that's just awesome that is available to people to use. That's why I think GPU mining, again, another myth. GPU mining is done, right? You can't do it anymore. On CPU mining, I'm kind of with it. I mean, CPU mining is pretty much gone.
It's profitable for like 3 or 4 weeks every 6 months.
Yeah, right. Right. It's cool to do it. I mean, you got your processor sitting there all day and make it do something. But yeah. But GPU mining, I think, is around for a while because of that. There we go. I want to thank you guys for having me out here. One thing I wanted to mention is that Joe and I we're going to take over the CU meetup in Champaign. The guys that were currently running it are moving, so we are trying to network with people. So if you guys know people in Champaign that go to UI or whatever, we're trying to work with people to increase their awareness about about Bitcoin, its use cases, and get more information out there for people. So if we got a few minutes, if you guys have any questions, let's give a hand for it.
Ethereum-wise, when it goes to proof of stake, are you just going to pitch it? Or?
I don't think it's going to go. My personal opinion is I don't think it'll go proof of stake. The reason I say
Are you
that,
talking about classic?
no,
Yeah, not classic.
not classic. Classic will say proof of work, probably. I don't think it'll go proof of stake because I think competition, right? I think classic's going to force it. Personally, I may be totally wrong on this. I think it'll force it to stay proof of work. My opinion is that proof of work is critical to a blockchain. So no, I don't think we'll ditch it. I mean, we can't mine it with GPUs. We'll mine other GPU coins. Yeah.
So comment, like the first coin that was proof of stake was Peercoin. It's
Yeah.
about 4 or 5 years old, and they still do centralized check coining.
Right.
Which, so if that coin can't get off of some centralization, how can anybody
Yeah.
else?
I think, to me, if you think about economics, for anything to have value, there has to be some work done, right? There has to be capital put into it. There has to be something, you have to expend resources and put it into something. So to me, Bitcoin is we're expending energy and resources to create a digital good, right? So just like in my real job, we manufacture dry ice, right? So we're expending electricity, labor, all those types of things. We're making investments to produce dry ice. There's nothing different in what we're doing. It's just a virtual good. So in that aspect, I mean, I